Welcome back to Spilling Tea. Today, we're talking about something people don't say out loud enough, and that's healing isn't always peaceful. Sometimes it feels like reopening a door you swore you'd nailed shut, duct taped, and spiritually cleansed. And somehow it still creaks open like, hey, remember me? We love the idea of healing when it looks like candles, soft music, a weighted blanket, and a journal that makes us feel emotionally evolved after 2 pages. But real healing, the kind that actually changes you, it's loud. It's definitely uncomfortable, and it's always inconvenient. It tends to show up right when you thought you were finally doing fine. And it has this way of brushing up against wounds you were pretty sure expired years ago. Like, why is this still here? Didn't I unsubscribe from this feeling? But here's the truth. Healing doesn't just deal with what happened recently. It reaches back and it touches every place in you that still remembers the original hurt. And that can feel like you're going backwards, when really, you're finally going deeper. First, I want to take a look at what healing actually looks like, because healing isn't linear. It's not a straight line. It's more like a spiral, or honestly, like a GPS that keeps saying, recalculating, because you somehow took the same wrong turn again. And you're like, how am I back here? I thought we left this exit already. You circle back to things you thought you were done with, not because you failed, but because you're strong enough now to face them differently, with more awareness, better tools, and a little more patience with yourself. Before, everything was simple. You would say things like, I'm fine, or I'm not fine. And that was the full emotional range, like teaspoon-sized emotions. Now it's like, I feel triggered. I feel overwhelmed and slightly abandoned. And I might just be hungry, but we're going to unpack it anyway, kind of growth. You've got language now, awareness. And sometimes you don't like what you're aware of, but at least now you can see it. And I had a moment like this in my journey of healing. I was doing well, like better than I was anticipating. I was consistent, getting back into jogging and walking and taking care of myself, minding my business, setting boundaries respectfully, but firmly. I even said no to something and didn't follow it up with a full explanation. No paragraph, no justification, no I'm sorry at the end. And afterward, I literally sat there and was like, who is this person? Who allowed this kind of growth? And you start thinking, okay, I've healed. I have arrived. I'm over this. And in some ways, I think I was also using those things to distract myself from really thinking about it, convincing myself that if I just kept moving, kept improving, I wouldn't have to sit with it. That old out of sight, out of mind mentality. Distractions, distractions, distractions. And then something small happens. For me, it was a tone, just a tone in someone's voice. Nothing dramatic, no argument, no big moment. But my body reacted like it was a situation. And I remember thinking, why did that hit me like it just paid rent here? And that moment can feel discouraging, like you're back at the beginning. But take heart, my friends, you're not back at the beginning. You're reacting like that because healing is revealing. It doesn't show up to embarrass you. It just shows you what still needs attention, what still hurts, and what you've been quietly carrying. Because sometimes I'm fine didn't mean you were actually fine. It meant I'll deal with this when I have the capacity to deal with this. And now you do. So things are coming back up, not to knock you down, but to finally be dealt with. So why does this happen? Why do old wounds come back up right when you're trying to move forward? Like, respectfully, could we please not do this? Because your mind and your body are incredibly smart, slightly dramatic sometimes, but very smart. When you've been living in survival mode, you're stressed, you're overwhelmed, just trying to get through the day, you're not processing everything as it happens. You don't have the time or the energy to unpack things in real time. So your system stores them like emotional fat. It's like, we don't have time for this, so we'll put it away for later. And if we're being honest, that later space, it got crowded. There's no labels, no shelves, just chaotic vibes. And I picture it like a closet. You know, that closet that you keep shoving things into, where every once in a while you open it and something falls out and hits you. And now you're using your whole body like you're in a losing game of Tetris, just cramming it back in there, slamming the door shut like, nope, we're not unpacking this today. That's what we emotionally do. Experiences, feelings, moments that hurt stacked on top of each other. But then something changes. You start healing. Your life becomes more stable. You feel safer. You set boundaries. You reconnect with yourself. And you finally allow yourself to exhale. And your system notices that and it goes, oh, we're safe now. Perfect. Let's open everything we didn't deal with before. No warning, just door flings wide open and suddenly everything comes spilling out. And you're like, oh, so this is what we're doing today. And I've had days where it's like nothing even happened outwardly, but internally I'm like, why am I revisiting a feeling from 5 years ago at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday? That's why wounds reopen, not to hurt you again, but because they're finally ready to be processed. And I know it doesn't feel empowering in the moment. Sometimes it feels exhausting. Like, I asked for peace. I prayed for peace, even fasted for peace. Why did I get the extended version of my emotional history? But that resurfacing, it's not random. It's your system saying, we finally have the capacity to deal with all of this right now. So the tears, the memories, the unexpected reactions, that's not regression. That's release. Let's talk about triggers because they get a really bad reputation. News flash. The trigger isn't the problem, it's the teacher. People hear triggered and they think it means you're overreacting or you're being too dramatic. Like, you just woke up one day, you stretched and you said, you know what? Emotional chaos feels right today. But in reality, triggers are information. They point directly to places inside of you where something unresolved still lives. And this is the part that changed everything for me. I started actually asking myself, what is this really about, instead of why am I like this? Because there was a time when I would feel something strongly and immediately judge it. Like, oh, wow, we're crying over this? How embarrassing. Let's wrap it up and move on. Or, this is too much. I shouldn't be feeling this way. But when you slow it down, a trigger usually isn't about the moment that you're in. It's about what that moment represents. That tone of voice. It might connect to times you felt dismissed, feeling ignored. It might link back to moments that you felt invisible. That small disappointment, it might tap into a much bigger pattern. Like, logically, you know it's small, but your body is reacting like it just unlocked a premium memory from 2007. And once you see it like that, it shifts from being frustrating to being informative. It's like your brain pulled up receipts you didn't even know you kept. Time-stamped, categorized, saved in 4K for absolutely no reason whatsoever. Fully documented, but still open. A trigger is your body saying, hey, this right here, this still needs care. And yes, it can feel inconvenient. Like, we're spiraling over this today. Interesting. I didn't have that on my schedule. I had snacks and peace planned. But triggers aren't the problem. They're actually the starting point. And when you shift from, why am I like this, to, what is this showing me? That's when healing changes. I want to take a look at what healing feels like in real time. Because to me, healing feels like clarity. It feels like finally naming what hurt you out loud without minimizing it or explaining it away. It feels like setting boundaries you used to be afraid to set in the first place, even if your voice shakes while doing it, like mine did. And sometimes it looks like hitting send on a message and immediately questioning your entire personality afterward. Guilty on that one too. Like, was that respectful? Was that too much? Should I have softened it a little bit? Added maybe a smiley face emoji, a disclaimer perhaps, maybe a formal apology. The list goes on. And then reminding yourself, no, that was honest. It feels like saying no without turning it into a full explanation, a backstory, and a closing statement. It looks like catching patterns you used to run on autopilot with and pausing long enough to choose differently this time. That's growth. Real, slightly uncomfortable, this feels illegal, but correct kind of growth. But let's be honest. Healing also feels like grief. It means letting go of versions of yourself that helped you survive. The people-pleasing version. Hello. The over-giving version. The I'll tolerate this version. The version of you that bent over backwards just to keep the peace, even when it cost you your own peace. And sometimes you miss those versions. Not because they were healthy, but because they were familiar. And familiar feels safe to you, even when it wasn't good for you. Healing also feels like mourning. It's the time you lost, the energy you gave, the effort you poured into things that were never going to meet you halfway. The conversations you replayed over and over again in your head on a loop, trying to get it just right. The times you over-explained, overextended, overdid just to be understood. And realizing you shouldn't have had to work that hard in the first place. And that part hits because it's not just, wow, that was great. It's, I gave so much of myself there and I don't get that time or that energy back. And that realization can feel heavy, especially when you start to become more aware of how much time has already passed and how much of it you spent pouring into things that weren't pouring back into you. It's like looking back and thinking, I really thought that was normal. There's no shortcut through that part at all. There's no way to intellectualize it away. You just have to feel your way through it. Now, there is beauty in the mess. And here's what I want you to hold on to, especially if things feel messy right now. If old wounds are resurfacing, it doesn't mean something's wrong. It actually means something is finally moving forward for you. You're not the same person who got hurt. You're stronger, wiser, more aware. You have tools now. You can pause, reflect, notice, and sometimes you can even catch yourself mid-spiral. Like, oh, wow, this again? All right, We're not going to unpack everything today, but we're also not going to pretend it's still not here. And I've had to remind myself of that because there are moments where you're doing really well and then something humbles you real quick. Like, oh, we still react to that? Noted. And instead of thinking, I'm back at square one, you start realizing, nah, I just met another layer. And layers don't mean failure, they mean depth. You don't have to bury it anymore. You don't have to shove it in a box and sit on the lid like your life depends on it. You can actually work through it and close it. Healing isn't about pretending the past didn't happen. It's about reclaiming what you lost in it. Your voice, your boundaries, your sense of safety, your peace. And yes, it's messy. Some days it looks like clarity, and some days it looks like crying in your car and then going into Target as if nothing ever happened. But the mess, that's proof that you're in the work. That's proof that something in you is shifting. That's proof that you're no longer willing to stay where you were. And for me, I come back to scripture because I find that opening up the book and reading scripture brings me clarity and peace. And as it says in Psalm chapter 30, verse 5, weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. Find that joy in every single circumstance that you face in this life. I promise you there is a smidgen of joy in every single circumstance. The other scripture that appeals to me for this is also in Psalm. It's chapter 147, verse 3. He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds, which means this process is messy. It's uncomfortable, but it's not wasted. It's not punishment. It's part of being restored. So if it feels messy right now, hold on to this. You're not falling apart. You're being put back together the right way this time. If you're in a season where everything feels a little more tender, where old emotions are resurfacing and you're wondering why, just breathe. Nothing has gone wrong. You're not falling apart. You're not starting over. You're healing. And I know it doesn't always feel good. Sometimes it's exhausting, confusing even. Sometimes it feels like, why am I here again? It's like a bad penny that always turns up. Didn't we already unlock this level of Jumanji? No, but this is real healing. And real healing is what lasts. So be gentle with yourself. Talk to yourself a little kinder. Give yourself the same patience you give everyone else so freely. You don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to stay with yourself through it. Even on the days where staying with yourself just means getting through the day and not completely spiraling. And honestly, some days that counts as growth. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. If this episode resonated with you, share it with somebody who loves deep conversations like I do. If you'd like to continue the dialogue with me, you can always reach out to me at ce.spillingtea@gmail.com. Share your story with me, your thoughts, whatever feels real to you. You don't have to carry it alone. Thank you so much for being here, for staying in this conversation with me. This is Spilling Tea, and I'm your host, Colleen. And today, the tea wasn't pretty, and it may have tasted like I was spoon feeding you some sour milk, but the tea was honest. And sometimes honesty is the thing that sets you free, even when it's a little uncomfortable, especially then. Have a great night, my friends.